Hi. You just like to sit with your back to me, don't you? Don't you? Hey guys, it's Kathleen. Welcome back to my channel. So today for you guys is Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving. Eat a bunch of good food and, you know, sleep. Sleep's good. But for me, it's the day before Thanksgiving, and on this day, traditionally, me and my mom make pies for Thanksgiving. Now, since we moved to Florida this year, we are cutting down the number of pies we're making because it's just going to be my mom and dad and myself for Thanksgiving. So we're going to make 2 pies today, which is our, like, norm. We're going to make an apple cranberry pie and a lemon meringue pie, which, gotta say, are the 2 best pies you can have on Thanksgiving. Don't at me. So yeah, we're gonna make some pies today. So yeah, if you want to see how I make my pies, then keep on watching. So the ingredients you'll need are 5 apples. You can switch it up and have like 2 different types of apples, like we have Granny Smith's here and Fuji. We're gonna use 3/4 of a bag of cranberries. These are the frozen ones. We use them frozen, so try to keep them in the freezer until you need them. We have pepper, which is kind of strange ingredient for apple pie, but it's what my mom always does, so that's what we're gonna do. We have ground cinnamon. We have some white sugar in this container, lemon juice, butter, vanilla extract, and some flour. So, featuring mom's hands, but she's gonna add some lemon juice to the water. She doesn't really measure it because that's just what we do, but probably about 1/4 cup of lemon juice will go into, I would say, about 3.5–4 cups of water. This is to soak the apples in so they don't turn brown while you're slicing and peeling. So what we did was we just cut the apples into quarters to soak them in the lemon and water because we didn't want them to get too saturated. So now we're going to be slicing them up into pretty good sized chunks, like so, because we're going to be cooking them down and we want them to kind of keep a little bit of their integrity. Okay, now that they're all cut, we're going to put them back into the lemon water so they don't turn brown. Let them soak for a minute or 2. Just to let that lemon juice work. So what we do differently is we cook the mixture that goes into the apple pie. So we just have like a big, deep, kind of wok style pan. Add 3 tablespoons of butter and 2 cupfuls of lemon juice, which is roughly about 2 teaspoons-ish. Bring that over here to the stove and we'll turn it to medium heat. So once your butter is starting to melt, ours is almost completely melted here, we're gonna strain our apples out just to get all the extra water out. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're gonna cook some of that water off. So we've got the apples in the pan. And next we are going to add the cranberries. So we'll put them in the same strainer that we strained the apples in and check them for stems because you don't want any stems in your pies. So now we'll add our sugar. So we usually add around 3/4 cup of sugar, but you can adjust the sugar to how sweet you like your pies. And then some cinnamon. We do about 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. And then shake in about 1 teaspoon of pepper. And we'll stir this all together just to get it starting to combine. So by cooking this down, you're going to get some liquid in the bottom of the pan, which you will need to make our thickening agent with the flour, which will make the pie stick together better once it's fully cooked in the pie crust. That's why we use frozen cranberries, because they give off a lot of liquid. Now that we cooked it down and got a bunch of liquid in the bottom, we're going to add some flour. So add about 1/2 cup and stir that in. I'm trying to get it down into that liquid because that's where it'll start thickening. So now we're going to turn the heat off because we don't want to completely cook the apples and cranberries. We just want to get it warm, that liquid nice and warm so it can start combining. Okay. And if it gets too thick, then you can just add a little bit of water just to keep it loose. So we added just about half a cup of water because ours is a little too thick. So we're going to put that over the burner that we were using, which is still hot but not on, and just let that kind of warm up the water and so it can get all combined in there. So you're going to taste this mixture and see if it needs any more cinnamon or if it needs any more sugar. And ours looks like it needs more cinnamon. Yeah, it does need more cinnamon. So we're going to add another teaspoon of cinnamon. So you'll take the pan off of the heat and let it be. Look how, you see how it has that little bit of, it's kind of like almost wet looking, kind of like syrupy, and that's exactly what you want because that's going to make the apple pie delicious. So now we add the vanilla. It'll be about a tablespoon. You add it at the very end because you don't want it to cook off completely. You want it to be nice and strong. So we'll leave this out and let it come to room temperature while we're making the pie crust. Okay, so this is probably the most foolproof pie crust recipe that I have found that works for me. But of course you can make any pie crust that you like, but this one just is really easy and it always turns out great. So my normal recipe calls for 2 cups of flour, but I'm going to use 3 since I need a bottom crust for the apple pie and a top crust, and then I'm also making a bottom crust for a lemon meringue pie. So I'll do 3 cups of flour. 3 cups of flour, there we go. And then I'm going to do 1.5 teaspoons of salt, so just eyeball it. That's about a teaspoon. That's about half. So I'm just going to take my pastry cutter and just kind of stir that together. Also helps break the flour up, get it a little bit loose and ready to go. Next, I need 3/4 of a cup plus 3/8 of a cup of Crisco. This one is already 3/4, so let's use the rest of this stick. So to get to 3/4 of a cup, I'm going to do right here, which is kind of right in the middle of 1/2 and 1/4. Just plop it right in. Now I'll take my pastry cutter and I'll kind of cover up the shortening a little bit. I don't know why, I always do it like that just so I feel like it starts out with flour on all sides of the shortening. And I'm just gonna work that in until the shortening and the flour kind of looks like breadcrumbs, kind of coarse breadcrumbs. Okay, so this is the consistency that I like to see in my crust when it's in the dry stage. Just kind of got some little chunks in it, but that's really good. It makes the crust nice and flaky. The next step is to add water. I never use an exact measurement for water because Florida's humid and it kind of varies from day to day, so I kind of just judge it off of the texture of the crust. So I usually start with about 1/4 cup, and I'll just take a spoon and stir that in just to see how the crust wants to come together. So the key here is to make sure your crust comes together, but it's not too dry or too wet. You kind of want it in that happy medium. Like I said before, this pie crust is very forgiving, so if you add too much water, all you have to do is add a little extra flour while you're kneading it, and it will be the perfect texture. So I added about 1 cup of water, and it is a little bit on the wet side. So we'll just do like I said, and add a little bit more flour to the table when we were rolling this out. So now I'm going to take 1/3 of this, a little over 1/3 actually, separate it out in the bowl, kind of off to the side. I'll get some flour and spread it liberally on a clean surface. I have this Hoosier, which is like nice and smooth. I'll take this and I'll pop it right down on there. So now I'm gonna sprinkle some more on top. And then I'm gonna knead my dough until it gets a little bit firm. I want it to have a little bit of kind of toughness to it. That way it can roll out and stick to its shape that I want it to keep. Alright, so now this is where I want it to be. So I'll sprinkle even more flour down. I'm gonna use just a little extra flour on the top. I'm gonna take my rolling pin and I'm gonna roll this out into the best circle I can make. So we can put that in the bottom pan. So I'm gonna roll this out into the best circle that I can make so we can fit it into the pan. And as you're rolling, just make sure that you have enough flour underneath the crust so it doesn't stick. So like I need a little bit more right here. Okay, so you want to make sure your pie crust isn't too thin. So you want it to be about this thick, if you can see that right there. Kathleen, zoom in. And you want it to be uniform all the way through, so that way when the pie crust cooks, it cooks evenly. So now I'm just gonna take it, I'm gonna roll it up over my rolling pin, grab my pie plate, and then drape it over like so. And then just lift the edges to make sure it fits into the pie pan. So we'll add a little on this edge first. So we have some overhang that will be used to bring the two pie crusts together. And then you're gonna take your knife and you're gonna go kind of on the outside edge and cut off the excess. All the scrap pie crust you can put right back into the other stuff that you haven't already rolled out and continue using it. So here is the bottom pie crust. So I'm going to add more flour to my surface to roll out the top. What I like to do is have a cup of flour just sitting on standby waiting for when I need it. So I'll grab some more of that pie crust and I'll use scraps from the bottom. And we're gonna knead this together, just like we did before. So now that our top crust is rolled out, make sure that's rolled out, there we go. We're going to put the apple pie filling into the apple pie, and then we'll put the topping right on it. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna drape the pie crust right over. Make sure it has overhang on all the edges, and then cut off the excess, just like before. We're gonna throw the excess away this time because it's been worked so much. I don't want it to be too tough. So now, the way I like to crimp is I kind of press the sides together and fold under to start with, so that way we can get a seal so that filling doesn't leak out. Now you could leave the pie crust looking just like this, so it has like that rustic-y feel. But I like to crimp the edges just a little bit, so I just take my fingers and I kind of just pinch together. So next, we're gonna just cut some slits in the top to get some ventage in there so the pie doesn't explode, because no one wants an exploding pie on Thanksgiving. Just like so. Now we'll put this on a baking sheet with tin foil on it so we don't get any drippage in the oven. We'll cook this at 375 degrees for 60 to 70 minutes depending on your oven, just until this is nice and golden and the pie crust is completely cooked all the way through and the filling is nice and cooked. So for the lemon meringue pie's crust, I did the exact same thing as I did with the apple pie crust, just rolled it out and put it in the pie pan, but this time I cut around the edges and left it this way because with the lemon meringue pie, this is going to shrink because we're going to blind bake this. So we want to have a little extra so the pie crust isn't too small for the actual pie. Plus the edges are going to be covered up by the nice meringue. So no worries about how this looks. So we're going to blind bake this at 375 degrees until it's done. There's not really much of a time frame because it's different for everybody, but you should keep it in a glass pan so that way you can check the bottom of it to see when the pie crust is completely cooked through. So we'll put this right in the oven. So it took about 15 minutes for this pie crust to completely cook all the way through. As you can see under here, it's done. It's kind of pulled away from the pan, which means it is fully cooked all the way through. So we'll move on to our lemon curd. Now I use a recipe from the Wicked Good Kitchen. I have it pulled up on my computer here. And while I almost follow this recipe to its entirety, there's one thing that I do change, but I'll explain to you in a second. So what you will need are 7 to 8 egg yolks. I have 8 because they were kind of on the smaller size. A tablespoon of lemon zest. 4.5 ounces of lemon juice, which I got right here, and I used fresh squeezed lemon juice because the lemon juice from the bottle is gross. And then a stick of butter cut up into little pads. You want this to be cold, so I'm going to pop this back into the fridge. So what I did change with this recipe is I don't use 1 1/4 cups of sugar. I use roughly a cup of sugar because my family doesn't like super sweet lemon curd, so I cut it down just a little bit, and it doesn't really change the texture of the curd or anything. It just makes it less sweet. So I have my egg yolks in a glass bowl. So I'm going to add the sugar to it. Sugar's in. So I'm going to grab a whisk. I'm going to use a plastic whisk. Here, this little plastic whisk. And we're going to whisk this together vigorously until it is smooth and well blended, which will take a minute or two. Alright, this is the perfect texture. It's completely combined and it started getting a little bit fluffy, which I really like. So now we're going to add our lemon juice. And also this recipe calls for salt, but I use salted butter instead of unsalted, which is fine. It just replaces the salt that I would have added before. We're going to whisk in this lemon juice until it's combined, and then we're going to get our water going for our double boiler because we cooked this over a double boiler. So we're going to take this and turn it on to like a medium high. I have about 1 inch of water in this pan. I've already measured the glass bowl and it fits perfectly in here. So once this gets to a simmer, we'll put our bowl on and start the rest of the cooking process. So now that my water is at a simmer, I'm going to turn it down to like medium low. I'll turn it down more if I need to. I'm going to put my bowl right here. And now for 20 minutes, you're going to whisk this constantly. And it should thicken up. But you want to make sure that your water isn't boiling because you could scorch the bottom of your lemon curd. And you also want to make sure you're constantly whisking it because you don't want it to get all lumpy. That's like the worst thing that could happen to lemon curd. It's not fun. You have to start completely over. So yeah, just do this for 20 minutes. So it's been about 20 minutes, and the way you test your lemon curd is you take it on the back of a spoon like this. It's hard to do with 2 hands. But then you run your finger through it, and if it holds its shape, it's done. So this stuff's done. And I just put this to the side, turn my heat off, and I'm going to put this pan on a hot plate over on my counter. So, while the mixture is still hot, we're going to add our lemon zest and whisk it in. I still have my same whisk. Got my lemon zest here. I covered it with plastic to keep it a little bit moist. So add it right in. Use my little whisk to get it all right in there. And we'll whisk it in. Ooh, smells really good. Really lemony. You're gonna add the butter 1 piece at a time and mix it in until it melts, and then you'll add the next piece, and so on and so forth, until all of your butter is in and combined with your curd. Alright, now all the butter has been added and it's starting to get really thick. So what we're going to do is cover this with plastic and like press it down onto the curd so it doesn't get that gross film on top. And we're going to refrigerate it until it's nice and set up. On to the meringue. I'm going to use the egg whites that I separated from the egg yolks for the lemon curd. So we're going to put these into a metal bowl, or any bowl really, but this one's metal. And we're going to whip them until they get stiff. And as we go, we're going to be adding some powdered sugar to the mix for some sweetness. So here we go. Boom, stiff peaks, nice. Now we'll assemble the pie. All right, let's see how our lemon curd did in the fridge. Ooh, that lemon curd looks really set. Lovely. What I'm gonna do is take my lemon curd and I'm gonna just spread it evenly into the pie shell. Next, we'll add the meringue and I'll go handheld. So what you wanna do with the meringue is make sure you get it onto the crust. That way it seals the whole pie. And also because the meringue will shrink when you put it in the oven to brown, it's gonna kinda seize up and get a little smaller, just like the pie crust did. So you want to try to give it that little bit of extra space so it doesn't unseal itself. Now you can add the texture if you like. We usually do, just because, you know, it's tradition. And now we'll put it in an oven that has been preheated to 355 degrees. And it's going to go in for about 10 minutes until the meringue is nice and golden. Ooh, look at that beautiful pie. It's nice and golden brown, a little bit of the white. And then this cranberry pie. Ooh, damn. These look good. Good enough to eat, which I will. I will eat both. Yes. There we go. There are the pies made for Thanksgiving. So I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to see more content from me. I post every Monday and Thursday. And leave a comment telling me what your favorite kind of pie is for Thanksgiving. Because I know most people are like pumpkin pie, but not me. So anyways, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!